All right, well, welcome back. Hope you all are having a great week. I want to pick up on our the personal research guide, which we spoke about last time, Project 1 for English 3010. We went over the introduction, rationale, the assignment prompt. We discussed the main items here in this bulleted list. We talked about interviewing professional or academic in the field and the option of talking to a librarian. So, and we began talking about the minimum requirements for this particular paper, and I wanted to, as indicated in our last video, that we want to pick up and talk about that some more. So, um, you might want to have Project 1 Personal Research Guide assignment up in front of you, or refer to it, or feel free to follow along with me here on the screen. The minimum requirements start off with Swale's 6 characteristics of discourse communities, which we read about last week, and which we had a discussion board posting on. And so the thing I want to kind of emphasize here is Swale's 6 characteristics of the discourse communities as heuristic that organizes the information you gathered and formats the guide for easy reference. So perhaps I should title this particular video more concerning formatting necessarily than it is discussing the minimum requirements. I think that Swale's 6 characteristics provides an opportunity to help you stay on track and to make sure that you hit all of the items that you need for this particular assignment. And then you'll notice that many of these bullet points underneath here do address some of Swale's 6 characteristics of the discourse communities, which you need to make sure that you identify in your research guide. So another question I often get is not only the organization, but what does it look like? What does this discourse community personal research guide, as we put all these things together, how does it look visually? So I'm going to direct your attention to give you some potential examples here. So if you go to the WayneStateComposition.com blog, which I have provided you with a link below, it will take you to, should take you directly to the English 3010 site, and we have several of our course materials and other examples, if you will, samples. And so I will be pulling up these 4 student samples, and we're going to kind of talk through a few of those today. So what does the research guide look like? So we'll start with student 1A, and this particular one, as you can see, as you notice the formatting, you can tell by the upper right-hand corner here that this is clearly APA style. And as we discussed in our last video, the particular style that you use is up to you. As long as everything is contained, as long as you're consistent, it's MLA, APA, Chicago, or other type of that's something that's common in your field, which we also spoke about last week. So we have as is common with APA, we have a title sheet here discussing, and this particular one gives us the indication that we have this one was graded an A-, and so we might talk about a few of those. And so we can see here that this particular author stays within her particular field and talks about has an abstract and states very clearly that she's going to explore social work as a discourse community, identify the Swale's 6 characteristics, as well as some concentrated research questions for the future, which we will find out also as part of the assignment for this. Okay, so one thing I really like about this particular paper that I would like you to take note of is the fact that it has that organization that was indicated in the research guide. So the research in the research guide minimum requirements. This personal research guide to help you stay on task and to help you make sure you get everything in your paper, you structure it, and kind of go down, I want to say, in a way, literally using Swale's 6 indicators, characteristics. So this particular author does a really good job of going through. Here's the common public goals, states those very clearly. Notice that she is sticking within her social workers. That she talks about the mechanisms of intercommunications and identifies those specific locations where those can be found. The genre that is used within, of course, and I just mentioned APA. She also identifies APA as well. The mechanisms of information transfer. So we have this conference he talks about. editorial board review, how those things are put together, and then brings in, as we spoke about last week, the specific lexis, how these how this particular discourse community specializes in their communications, as well as it looks like there are for specialization in social work, revised and contained. So here you have this, their Bible, so to speak, right? They have their DSM, and then she kind of gives an idea of who implements that, takes care of that, what it takes to be a member of this community, the very specific items that one must do, accomplish in this particular field, and then she ends with her research questions. Level of stress is this field put on professionals, methods, how you might look at this for the future, and of course her references. This is not necessarily, as we indicated in our last video, it's not necessarily that you have to cite from each one of these, but these are the resources from where you gathered your information. So this was an A-, not an A, so you might be sitting there asking your question, why specifically is that? Let's go back to the minimum requirements. And although he or she does a wonderful job with Swale's 6 characteristics, I'd like to point out a few items that perhaps were maybe overlooked or perhaps forgotten. So we have maybe some major topics that's taken place over the last 5-10 years. 2 or 3 of your own research questions were there: a bibliographic list, an invention portfolio, how the project was composed over time, assembling, planning, and some drafting documents. So the few things that I feel were missing on that particular one that you might want to make sure that you do include in yours. While you might read back over that and say, well, maybe she did talk about some things over the past 5 to 10 years, I think it would be a good idea to have a dedicated section perhaps to talk about maybe some of the major topics. Let's go back to student 1A, specific lexis, threshold of membership, and I think a specific section about major topics in the field. Although there may have been a situation where maybe a few of them may or may not have been repeated, I think definitely an explication of that particular heading for research would have been well served there. And maybe a little bit of a kind of a process of how the portfolio or how the research guide kind of came together, and a little bit more explication just in general, I think, on this paper would have been perhaps beneficial for this particular project. So don't forget, I would make sure that you make sure that every single thing on this bullet list is represented in your personal research guide. Not only you're handing this in just merely for a grade, but this personal research guide is going to serve us as we go, serve you as you go into the genre analysis, and then as you build towards your overall research paper. So I would advise you to keep those things in mind. So if we look, I'd like to look at student 2A. We can see a different sort of organization here, and there again, I advise you, I recommend using Swales' 6 characteristics that will just help you to stay on topic, stay on task. Some things that were not in that previous research guide are in this research guide. The hot topics listing of the journals that were seem to be absent from the previous one. So my recommendation is to perhaps take a serious look at number 1 and number 2 as far as the examples are concerned, and a good meshing perhaps of those two. And I can't stress enough to make sure that you take the bulleted list yourself and make sure that you have a good solid representation of all of the categories. Using the student examples is okay. That's why we're looking at them here. But more than anything, don't use them as your definitive list. So make sure you have everything. Use the list that's provided here in the minimum requirements. This is what I will be looking at. This is what you will be evaluated on, whether you have these particular items. So make sure you read those clearly and that each one is represented in your personal research guide. If you have any questions, please do let me know. Email me through the course, and I'm happy to make anything more clear for you as much as possible. And I'll pick up next. We'll pick up on connect some of the learning objectives as well as our next week's reading in our next video. So I will talk to you then. Have a great week.